Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad an-Nabiy al-Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim tasliman kathira. Rabbana atina min ladunka rahma wa hayyi' lana min amrina rashada. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad an-Nabiy al-Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Asalaamu, Alaikum rahmatullah. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be in your company again. And this is quite a different aura than what we're used to, but inshallah, Allah will send the angels wherever we gather for His remembrance, inshallah. So we left off, alhamdulillah wa shukrillah, before the long break on the section Man yuqta'u lahum bil jinani. So the chapter concerning those guaranteed paradise. And he says, rahimahullah, Imam Al-Lamti, rahimahullah, Bayanu man yuqta'u bil jinani lahum wa man adhana lil adnani. To clarify those who were promised paradise as well as the ones who called the adhan for al-adnani, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. يُقْطَعُ بِالْجَنَّةِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ لِعَشْرَةٍ لِلْخُلَفَاءِ الْأَعْلَامِ. With certainty, those who were promised paradise and special honor are 10, including the 4 learned caliphs. So this is where we left off last time. We cited the hadith. The reason why they're called al-Ashar al-Mubashirin, the 10 promised paradise, is that they were listed in one single narration. Allah be pleased with them all, affirming their place in paradise. And the narration, the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is related by Tirmidhi and others, that Abu Bakr fil Jannah, wa Umar fil Jannah, wa Uthman fil Jannah, wa Aliyun fil Jannah, wa Talhatu fil Jannah, wa Zubayr fil Jannah, wa Abdurrahman ibn Auf fil Jannah, wa Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas fil Jannah, wa Sa'id ibn Zayd fil Jannah, wa Abu Ubaidah ibn Al-Jarrah fil Jannah. Naam. So the Prophet ﷺ, he used a complete sentence for each one and repeated fil Jannah, in paradise, emphasizing, they say al-itnab, to use more words, normally rhetorically is not preferred, but in a case like this, it is preferred because it serves to emphasize. And so in such a prestigious, noble, benediction and honor of these great ones, these luminaries, that to repeat fil Jannah, fil Jannah, fil Jannah. He could have said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr wa Umar wa Uthman, listed the 10, and then at the end one time fil Jannah. But the repetition of that, it's an eloquent repetition, an eloquent lengthening of the sentences as a way of emphasizing. And this is a mahal at-ta'kid. It is a situation that emphasis is preferred. So we discussed the first 4 khulafa last time, Allah be pleased with them, and so we'll continue with the remaining 6. Imam Lamti says in line 223, وَلِلزُّبَيْرِ وَابْنِ عَوْفِ وَسَعِيدٍ وَعَامِرِ سَعْدٍ وَطَلْحَةَ السَّعِيدِ وَعَمْرٌ نعم. So he adds the 6 in the next line, and just a few points of each one. Talha ibn Ubaidillah, he was one of the first 8 men to become Muslim, and he was a close friend to Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and so it was through Sayyidina Abu Bakr, his good friend, that he became Muslim. And of the tremendous honors that he has is that on the day of Uhud, he was one of the bodyguards of the Prophet ﷺ, and he suffered 75 wounds. He received 75 wounds while defending just the Prophet alone ﷺ. And this is the reason that the Prophet said, if anyone wants to see a walking martyr in this world, then let him look to Talha radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The only battle he missed was Badr. That's because the Prophet sent him and Sa'id ibn Zayd for a reconnaissance mission. And so they did not know that Badr had taken place. But when they came back, the Prophet gave them some of the spoils. So they're considered Ahlul Badr. They're considered Badris because innamal a'malu binniyat. The actions are only by intentions. They had intended to go, but they were instructed by the Prophet ﷺ to go on a specific reconnaissance mission. And so, and they're both amongst Ashar Mubashirin, Talha and Sa'id ibn Zayd. And then his generosity is highlighted, that he would often pay off the debts of his clansmen from the money he made from his extensive trade dealings in Iraq. One day his wife found him in a disagreeable mood. When she found out that some monetary holdings were troubling him, she advised him to distribute some to his clan. Talha then distributed all 400,000 silver dirhams that he had. He was feeling agitated about some financial things. He just gave it all away to his own clan. He was killed in the Battle of the Camel in the year 36 and was buried in Basra, although he was not there to fight. It is reported that a stray arrow penetrated his chest, upon which he said, "In the name of God, and God's decree must come to pass." So his last words were Bismillah and the وَكَانَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ مَفْعُولًا, or kama qal. So may Allah be pleased with him. Al-Zubayr Ibn Al-Awaam Ibn Khuwaylid. So Al-Zubayr, he is the son of Awaam Ibn Khuwaylid, who is the brother of our mother Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So he's the nephew of Khadija. And his mother, Zubayr's mother, is Safiya bint Abdi Muttalib. So his mother is the aunt, the paternal aunt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Sayyidina Zubayr is related to both Khadija, Allah be pleased with her, and he's a cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he's married to Asma bint Abi Bakr, the daughter of Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And so Zubayr is tremendous in many ways. He made the 2 hijras, first to Abyssinia or Ethiopia, and then secondly to Medina. He was the first one to draw a sword for Islam. So early in Mecca, there was a rumor that the Prophet had been killed, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he's the first one to pick up a sword, because in Mecca they weren't fighting, but he ran out with his sword, only to find that the Prophet was okay, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I heard you were killed, and I was prepared to fight all of Mecca single-handedly." So this is Az-Zubayr. He became Muslim at the age of 8. He was a young boy. His father tried to force him back into disbelief, but he refused to. And again, at Uhud, his chest was filled with scars because he was, again, one of the people defending the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he's one of the 6 that Sayyidina Umar, before he passed away, when he was stabbed at Fajr time, Sayyidina Umar appointed 6 companions to determine the caliphate, and he was one of them. And so he was eligible for being the caliph, but of course it went to Sayyidina Uthman. And then he did not fight on the battle of the camel. So he refused to take sides in the battle of the camel, and he turned and he was ready to leave. And as he was leaving, Ibn Jarmuz killed him, and so he died as a martyr also in the year 36, like Talha. And the next one, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, who was also a cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, but this time through his mother's side, Amina. Okay, so he's from Bani Zuhra. He's from Bani Zuhra, like Amina alayhi salam. He became Muslim at the age of 17, and his mother refused to eat until he left Islam, but he remained steadfast, and she eventually ate. He was the first to cast an arrow at the Battle of Badr, and the Prophet prayed for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "O Lord, direct his shooting and respond to his prayer." And he participated in all of the expeditions with the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he was the one in the famous hadith, he was ready to donate 2/3 of his wealth before dying, when he thought he was going to die. And the Prophet instructed him that the maximum you can do is 1/3, and the rest is for your dependents. And he said, وَثُلُث كَثِيرٌ أَوْ كَبِيرٌ, or kama qal, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, even 1/3 is a lot, or it's much. And so that the Prophet teaching us that leaving money for our own dependents is superior than donate. That's a superior charity than charitable donations outside of one's family, because he said it's worse to leave your children going around asking for money, so to empower your own family. And after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas served as a provincial governor under both Umar and Uthman, and led the armies that facilitated the entrance of Iraq and the cities of Persia into the Muslim domain. He was governor of Kufa for a time and then returned to Medina. Later in life, he lost his eyesight and then died at home near Medina. He was buried in the same shrouds that he wore on the day of Badr. And that was his request. And the 8th of the 10 promised paradise, Sa'id ibn Zayd. He's not as well known, unfortunately, Sa'id ibn Zayd. Sa'id ibn Zayd is the son of Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufail. Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufail is his father. Now his father was not a companion, but he lived up till the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but he died before the bi'tha, before the advent of prophethood, before revelation began. And Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufail was one of the Hunafa. He was one of the, at the time of the pre-Jahiliyyah, of the pre-Islamic Jahiliyyah, pre-Islamic ignorance, he refused to worship idols, and he wanted to hold on to the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so he was a steadfast monotheist in the time of idolatry, in the time of pagan idolatry. And one of his interesting virtues was that this unfortunate practice where they would bury infant girls alive, he actually would rescue them. He would go to the father who was about to do it and offer money, and he had like a little orphanage that he had for the infant girls that were destined to be buried, that he would rather take care of them himself. And so his fitra was so pure, he could see the vice of that, the evilness of that, the evil of that. And the Prophet said about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though he died before prophethood, there's a hadith that he shall be resurrected on the day of judgment. Zayd, not Sayyid, Zayd, the father, the monotheist of pre-Islamic Arabia, that he shall be resurrected on the day of on the day of judgment as a nation unto himself, an ummah, an entire ummah. Zayd ibn Amr will be an entire ummah on the day of resurrection. So Sa'id is his son. Okay, Sa'id ibn Zayd is his son, and so you could imagine his upbringing informed his being in amongst the Ashr Mubashirin. And who did he marry? Sa'id ibn Zayd married Fatima, the sister of Sayyidina Umar ibn Al-Khattab. So he's the brother-in-law of Sayyidina Umar, and it was at their house, Sa'id ibn Zayd and Fatima, that Sayyidina Umar's conversion took place. So as we all know the story, Sayyidina Umar was going before his Islam with the intention of killing the Prophet ﷺ, and one of the companions who was hiding his Islam met him on the way and directed him to, he at the moment he had to come up with something to avert. So the lesser of two harms, he said, well, what about your own family? Don't you know your sister is Muslim? And so he gives away this information for the sake of the Prophet ﷺ. It's the taking the lesser of the two harms. And Sayyidina Umar storms to their house, and it's Sa'id ibn Zayd and Fatima. They were reading, what surah were they studying? Surah Taha. They were studying Surah Taha. And so it had just been revealed. And Sayyidina Umar comes in, and after a tense situation where he even struck his sister, he calmed down finally. And then he wanted to see what they were studying, and she instructed him to go clean himself first before touching the Quran. So after he washed, made his shower, made his bath, then he read it, and Iman entered his heart. So Sa'id ibn Zayd is the brother-in-law of Sayyidina Umar. And then of course Sa'id ibn Zayd, as we just said, that he and Sayyidina Talha were sent on that reconnaissance mission. So they missed Badr, although they got some of the booty that was distributed to them as well. And then he participated in all the other battles with the Prophet ﷺ. And he also went out against the Persians, and he was part of the conquest of Damascus, and he served as the first Muslim governor of Damascus, Sa'id ibn Zayd. He died at the age of 70, and he's buried in the Baqi' cemetery. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, so Sa'id ibn Zayd died in the year 50. I didn't mention the dates. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas died in the year 55. Sa'id ibn Zayd died in the year 50. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Allah be pleased with them all, he died in the year 31. He's the 9th promised paradise, and he's one of the few companions, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, that actually led the Prophet ﷺ in prayer. Okay, he's one of the few to do that. He was also amongst the first 8 people to become Muslim, and he participated in both hijras to Ethiopia as well as Medina. He was extremely wealthy, but after his hijrah to Medina, he was in poverty. And so when the mu'akha happened, when the pairing of one emigrant with one helper as a brother, as a specific brotherhood, when the Prophet instituted that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the helper that was paired with Abdurrahman offered to give him wealth. He said, just show me where the market is. and he went and with his own genius of in marketplace genius, he was able to become wealthy again. And he gave more than half of his wealth in charity on more than one occasion. On more than one occasion, he gave more than half of his wealth in charity. But despite his wealth, they said he was indistinguishable from his slaves. You couldn't tell the difference. So these people, that even if they were wealthy, the way they would interact and their humility was, and this is something you read. We mentioned perhaps in one of our classes that this is a trait of all the prophets. They loved the poor. Our Prophet ﷺ, he chose to be materially poor when he was given the option. Either the mountains could turn for gold, or he could be a king prophet, or he could be a slave prophet, and he chose to be a slave prophet. Even the way he ate, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you read the descriptions, there's two specific ways, the sunnah of sitting while eating, and one of them is quite uncomfortable. It's the squatting position, and he said that I eat like a slave, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the reasons the ulama say that it's uncomfortable, because one shouldn't get so comfortable with food. One should be a bit uncomfortable so that it's just fulfilling a need, so they can get back, not just sitting, and like that's the main. Which is a very subtle sunnah to practice. It's something we often lose sight of these things. But our Prophet, he loved poor people. He said, "Oh Allah, let me live as a poor person, materially poor. Let me die as a poor person, and resurrect me amongst the poor. Wahshurni fi zumratil masakin." And he could have said, "Wahshur al-masakin fi zumrati." He could have said, "Let the poor people be resurrected with me," sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he says, "Let me be resurrected with them," as if they are superior, and he's honored to be in their company. And Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, when he was saying, "Awsini khalili bi umur," he said, "My best friend." Abu Dharr said, "My best friend, my Khalil," referring to the Prophet ﷺ, enjoined me to certain matters. Amongst them was hubb al-masakin wa dunu minhum, loving the poor and being close to them physically, actually being in their company. And Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, it's related that every day when he left the house, they would have like these halaqas, like these circles of people sitting, like company. And at first it was all the wealthy people and the upper class people, and Solomon, probably the wealthiest man ever, alayhi salam, arguably, he leaves and he passes all those the circles of the wealthy, and he keeps on passing until he gets to the circles of the poor people, and he sits down with them with his head lowered, and he said, "Miskin ma'al masakin." He says, "A poor man amongst the poor." Miskin ma'al masakin, alayhi salam, Prophet Solomon. So wealth in and of itself is not an evil thing, but when it affects the heart and when it leads one to see themselves as superior than others, this is what's sinful. It's actually haram. And in fact, Imam Ibn Hajar in his list of kaba'ir, in his book of kaba'ir, Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, he lists amongst the enormities of Islam to respect the wealthy because of their wealth. To actually do ta'zeem of aghniya li ghinahum, to actually venerate the wealthy because of their wealth, is listed in our tradition as an enormity, a major sin of Islam. And the rule of complementarity corresponding with that is to denigrate poor people because of their poverty. So just as we should not denigrate the poor people because of their poverty, that's a second kabira. So too, a kabira that's listed there, we should not venerate and respect rich people just because they're rich. No, we should venerate every believer because of their iman, and we should venerate we should respect every human because of their humanity. But we should not let these material aspects of people affect how we see them. And Allah knows best. So Abdurrahman ibn Auf certainly indistinguishable from his own servants. He was also steadfast with the Prophet ﷺ during Uhud, and he was wounded so severely at Uhud that he walked with a limp thereafter. Abdurrahman ibn Auf always walked with a limp after that. And then finally Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah one of the first to accept Islam, one of the few who memorized the entire Quran, and he made both hijras. He's called Amin al-Ummah, the trustee of this community, because he was so honest, and he suffered tremendously in the early persecution of the Muslims in Mecca, and he was also amongst those that guarded the Prophet ﷺ at Uhud, to the extent that when the best of creation, when the two metal pieces of his blessed helmet entered his blessed mouth, ﷺ, causing him so much pain, ﷺ, Abu Ubaidah was the one to take them out, and the way he took them out was with his own teeth, because he felt that this was the most effective way and the least painful for the Prophet ﷺ. And in the process, he broke 2 of his own teeth, and some of the blood of the Prophet ﷺ mixed in his own blood, Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. And our Prophet said, ﷺ, whoever's blood mixes with my blood, they cannot enter the fire. And so Abu Ubaidah has the distinct cosmic honor of his blood being shared with the blood of the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Umar was once, when he was Khalifa, he asked some of his companions, "What do you wish for?" And the first said, "I wish I had a house full of gold so I could spend it in the way of Allah." And the second companion of Sayyidina Umar said, "I wish I had a house full of pearls and gems that I could spend for the sake of Allah." And then they asked Sayyidina Umar, and Sayyidina Umar said, "I wish that this house was full of men like Abu Ubaidah." No. And he was part of the army. He led the army that opened up many parts of Syria, and when the Muslims had control of Syria, Syria was stricken by a plague, and as is the sunnah, he remained there faithfully instead of leaving, because the sunnah of a plague is one stays there and yahtasib, they count the reward with Allah. So he died as a martyr because of that plague, and he's buried in Jordan. We were honored to visit him. Allah be pleased with him. So those are the Ashar Mubashirin. Allah be pleased with them all. And then the Imam continues now with the Mu'adhinun, those that gave Adhan for the Prophet ﷺ. So he said, Imam Lamti says, وَعَمْرٌ أَوْسٌ وَبِلَالٌ سَعْدُ زِيَادُ الْمُؤَذِّنُونَ عُدُّ رِضْوَانُ رَبِّنَا عَلَيْهِمْ طُرًّا وَمَنْ تَلَا مِنْهَاجَهُمْ وَبَرًّا. His muazzins were Amr ibn Maktoum, who is the famous blind man, Al-A'ma. Allah be pleased with him. And so whenever the Prophet ﷺ would leave Medina for expedition, then he would lead the prayer. Aws Abu Makhdura. And then the third one, the most famous, Bilal al-Habashi radhiyallahu anhu, and then Sa'd and Ziyad. So Aws is Abu Makhdura, Bilal Ibn Rabah, Sa'd ibn A'idh, who's the client of Ammar ibn Yasir. And then Ziyad ibn al-Harth, who gave adhan only once. And when he gave adhan, the Prophet said the statement that is well known, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Man adhana fahuwa yuqim." Whoever gives the adhan, then he should give the iqama. That was when our master Ziyad ibn al-Harth gave adhan. Obviously, Sayyidina Bilal, there's so many tremendous things to mention about him. Allah be pleased with him. He was very beloved to the Prophet ﷺ. He was honored to be the main mu'adhin of the Prophet ﷺ, which was revealed through dreams that it should be Sayyidina Bilal. And he was the first one to make adhan for the Prophet ﷺ, and he made the most adhan for the Prophet ﷺ. And he did not make adhan for any of the Khulafa Rashideen. After the Prophet passed away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Bilal could not get himself to make adhan again, except once when Sayyidina Umar arrived in Sham, in Syria, after it was opened. And then Bilal made the adhan, and when he made mention of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the client of Umar, whose name was Aslam, he said regarding this, that once Sayyidina Bilal mentioned the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Lam ara bakiyan akthara min yawmi idhin." He said, "I never saw a crier more than that day." I never saw a crier, a weeper more than that day. So all of them broke out into tears. Naam. And then the commentator of the text, he also mentions the three poets. The Prophet ﷺ, he had poets who would defend Islam with poetry. And poetry, of course, was the prime mode of propaganda or swaying people's hearts, And so his three poets were Ka'b ibn Malik, Abdullah ibn Rawaha, and Hassan ibn Thaabit. The main three poets of the Prophet ﷺ, Ka'b ibn Malik, Abdullah ibn Rawaha, and Hassan ibn Thaabit. It's worth mentioning real quickly because some people get confused with Surah Abasa wa Tawalla, and Jahul A'ma, that the Prophet ﷺ, he was once sitting with some of the leaders of Quraysh, and Ibn Maktoum, who we mentioned, one of the mu'adhins, who was a blind man, he came to the Prophet ﷺ asking him questions about the religion. And Ibn Maktoum was already Muslim. These leaders of Quraysh were non-Muslim. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he was seeking to engage these leaders because of the benefit it would give to Islam. And Ibn Maktoum kept on asserting himself, trying to ask these questions. And the Prophet ﷺ frowned and turned away. And this is the ayah that was revealed, Abasa wa Tawalla, he frowned and turned away. And Jahul A'ma, that a blind man came to him. And so this is explained by our scholars, because we know that our Prophet ﷺ is ma'soom, he is infallible, he does not commit sin. And so the verses of Quran that appear to be blaming him, our ulama interpret in a way befitting to show that he is not being blamed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so regarding this, there's a little note that I had written a while back. As for the verses, he frowned and turned away because the blind man came to him. There is no affirmation of sin or wrongdoing on the part of the Prophet ﷺ. If you actually look at the words, it never says that the Prophet sinned or did something wrong. Rather, the verses merely reveal the internal states of the individuals he was addressing, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, his speech to the Qurayshi notables was invitation to Islam, which is pure obedience to Allah. He's engaging in da'wah, and da'wah is ta'ah. So how could he be doing something wrong by inviting them to Islam? In fact, Fakhruddin al-Razi in his tafsir argues that it was the blind man who committed the wrongdoing, while the Prophet ﷺ was but fulfilling a religious obligation. This is because the blind man was the one who interrupted the Prophet ﷺ, who was engaged in inviting non-Muslims to Islam, and annoying the Prophet ﷺ is a grave offense. Moreover, the blind man was already Muslim and wanted to learn the religion, and teaching a Muslim is of lesser priority than inviting non-Muslims to Islam. Between the two, which one is of higher priority? Saving someone from eternal problems, eternal damnation, or enhancing one's practice when they're already saved, destined to be saved, inshallah. So, and teaching a Muslim is of lesser priority than inviting non-Muslims to Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ was correct in leaving a matter, albeit important, for a matter more important. So he picked the greater of the two. Of two virtues, he picked the greater of the two. Therefore, the rebuke, quote-unquote, itab, that appears from the verses was not an actual rebuke of the Prophet ﷺ, who is perfect inwardly and outwardly, but rather a rebuke of, quote, the outward appearance of the incident. This is how Fakhruddin Razi explains it, that what seems to be a blame is a blame of the form of the situation, not the reality of the situation. Because what's the form of the situation? Because an observer could misconstrue it as preference of wealthy notables over an indigent and handicapped individual. On the outward, one could misunderstand that the Prophet ﷺ is preferring wealthy, elite members of society who are notables, and leaving aside or not focusing on someone who's poor, who's in fact handicapped and blind. And then on top of that, whose feelings were hurt. So the form of it one could misunderstand that. So the form, so the Prophet ﷺ, of course, did not act because of such a preference. It's not because they were wealthy or notables that he preferred them, or because he was blind and poor that he did not prefer him. It was the virtue of inviting a non-Muslim, particularly one whose effect would be so profound if he became Muslim, versus enhancing the education of someone already a Muslim. So the Prophet ﷺ, of course, did not act because of such a preference, yet because that is what occurred, as per the correct course of action on his part, ﷺ, a seeming rebuke was revealed. Yet it is well known that the Prophet ﷺ loved his companions more than disbelievers. Obviously, the Prophet would not genuinely prefer in love anyone over his companions, the disbelievers over his own beloved companions. And that, of course, it's well known that he loved the indigent more than the wealthy. We already mentioned this, in fact, that it's mashhur from the Sunnah. It's well known and established from the Sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ loved the poor people, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so this happens. That this is also how we understand the quote unquote, the act of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, the act of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam of eating from the tree, that deed was prohibited. To eat from the tree was prohibited. And Allah Ta'ala says, Asa Adamu Rabbahu faghawa, that He uses the term asa and ghawa. He says Adam, asa, which is a word that ma'asiyah comes from it, disobedience comes from it. And ghawa, ghiwaya, is to be off. It's the opposite of hidayah. So these two words are used in the Quran and ascribed to Adam alayhi salam. But the ulama say that it's similar to this, because Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam as a prophet is infallible. He cannot commit sin. All the prophets are ma'soom before prophecy and after prophecy. This is the position of Ahlul Sunnah. So that how the Mufassirin, some of the Mufassirin explain it, is asa and ghawa, these two terms that are used, what they mean is not the shar'i definitions, but the lughawi definitions. Not the definitions in the Sharia, which is disobeying Allah and being misguided rather than guided, but rather the linguistic definitions, which is again the form or the appearance of wrongdoing. That the outward form of it was a wrongdoing. The outward form of it was contrary to what was commanded. But the inward reality of Adam alayhi salam, he would never knowingly disobey Allah. As a prophet, he would never knowingly disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the way they explain it is that and it's sometimes it's difficult. Some Muslims that are not used to this discourse, they might find it strange, saying, "How can you? That seems so far off. That on the outward he did something wrong, but his inward was sinless." But this is the explanation of our ulama, that in fact, inwardly he was fulfilling a mandate of Allah. Inwardly he was fulfilling a mandate of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and outwardly he did that act. And it was on the form of which was disobedience, but the inward reality was he was ma'mur batinan. He was commanded to by Allah inwardly. Now someone could say, well, what's the proof of that? Give me another example in the Quran or Sunnah where that happens. So what's an example in the Quran and Sunnah of someone close to Allah on the outward doing something that's disobedience, but inwardly they were commanded to? Khidr alayhi salam. In Surah Al-Kahf, Khidr alayhi salam, he goes, he punctures the boat of innocent people. That's disobedience on the outward. You're not allowed to break someone's property. And then worse than that, the next time he murders an innocent young child, not even an adult. And on the outward, clear disobedience. But what does he say? وَمَا فَعَلْتُ عَنْ أَمْرِي, I did not do anything on my own accord. Allah commanded him inwardly to commit these actions. So the forms, and Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, he's looking at the form. He's the man of Sharia, he's the prophet of Sharia, he's the prophet of the law. And so he's correct although in that particular moment he was instructed to just learn from Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam, but it's not wrong on his part to condemn that, because on the outward it is wrong. But the reality of it, inward reality, is he was commanded. So there's a proof from the Quran. And there's even debate, the status of Khidr. Some say he was a wali. The dominant opinion, he was a Nabi, he was a prophet, Khidr alayhi salam. But some even said he's a wali. So if someone who's debated whether he's a saint or a prophet can be commanded internally to do something that the outward of which is incorrect, then A fortiori someone that it's ijma' that he's a prophet, Adam alayhi salam. There's no discrepancy. Everyone agrees that Adam alayhi salam is a prophet. And so even more so could he be commanded. And this is why I look at the hadith when Musa and Adam meet each other, alayhi salam, and Musa alayhi salam says, why did you do that? Why did you do that? We wouldn't have been in this mess in dunya and taklif and all of these things. What's the response of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam? Yeah, how could I not have if Allah had willed it? How could I not have if it was decreed by Allah? And what did our Prophet say about this debate, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who won the debate? Haja Adamu Musa. Adam beat Musa. Adam won the debate against Musa alayhi salam. He was correct. Our Prophet, the judge between two prophets debating, sallallahu alaihi wasallam jami'an. So this is the, and if you're still uncomfortable with that tafsir, then just better to err on the side of elevating a prophet than demoting them. That's just a general rule. You can't go wrong. But this is not from myself. This is from Sheikh Muhammad al-Hashimi and others that interpret these ayahs. So, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Naam. So that's that section. Okay, the next three sections are on the dawab, the animals of the Prophet ﷺ, silah, the weapons of the Prophet ﷺ, and thiyab, the garments of the Prophet ﷺ, which includes his athath, his furniture, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so this is looking at some of the intimate details of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one thing to keep in mind when reading all of this is that it's a miracle that this is even recorded. The fact that we know the details of his animals, how many horses he had, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how many camels he had, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how many sheep he had, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what were the names of his horses, the names of his mules, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he got them, and then his silah, how many swords he had, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the names of his swords, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how many spears and bows he had, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he got his armor from, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his helmet, etc., and then his clothing, how many articles of clothing, when he would wear them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his different belongings, and the furniture of his blessed house, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which figure of any religion or movement, particularly in the pre-modern world, is so much detail recorded. And this is again out of this, only a prophet is worthy of that. Only a prophet is worthy of that recording. And so there's tremendous barakah in going through this. So the Imam says, Dawabuhu sallallahu alaihi wasallam, dhikru dawabihi alayhi afdalu salati rabbi da'iman wa akmalu. May the best and most perfect of benedictions of my Lord be upon him, whose animals we now make mention. Lahu min al-khayl al-'itaqi 'ashara aw 9 fima hakahu al-mahara. He had 10 pedigreed horses, although some experts deemed them only 9. So either 9 or 10 pedigreed horses. Awwaluha sakbu. The first, his name is Sakb, with the sin, Sakb, which means downpour. Right? So when it would go fast, it was like a downpour because it was so fast. And this is the horse that he rode at Uhud, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Recently, when I reviewed this, I said, let me name my car Sakb. And then I found out my son, 5-year-old son, had already named the car. He named it Adam. So it's Adam. And then he named mom's car Buraq. It's good. It's a sunnah to name your possessions. It's actually a sunnah to do that. Name your vehicle, name your possessions. And there's actually a metaphysical benefit to that, because we don't see things as just things. We don't see, even things are not mere things. There's actually, we respect, we venerate, even our property is tremendous. Like mal, mal, property. It's one of the maqasid of the Sharia. And one of the whole foundational purposes of the sacred law is the preservation of property. And it's so serious that someone that steals property, that their very hand is to be severed. Putting aside, today whether and where that's applicable, but in the Sharia, in the revealed law, this is the had, punishment, that the hand, and a hand is a person's entire, how can a person work without the hands? Allah Ta'ala curses the two hands of Abu Lahab. Tabbat yada Abi Lahabin wa tab. May the two hands of Abu Lahab be perished, wa tab, and he is perished. The first one, tabbat yadahu, may the two hands, it's a dua against him. May the two hands of Abu Lahab be perished. And then it ends, wa tabba, this is a statement, and he is perished. But the statement is his whole being. Tabba, huwa, his whole being is perished. I.e., some of them say, if you lose two hands, then your whole being is perished. If you lose two hands, la qadr Allah, your whole being is perished. You can't function. And so how important is property? So property it has a sanctity. There's a sacred element to our possessions. There's a hurma. Kullul Muslim al Muslim haram, damuhu wa maluhu. The entire Muslim is sacred for another Muslim, his life and his wealth, i.e. his property, wa irduhu, and his good name. So we don't just see things as just mere things. No, we respect what Allah has given. وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. Think about that. وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ. Like your laptop is a ni'mah. Your pen is a ni'mah. Your books are a ni'mah. Your garments are ni'mah, blessings. Your glasses are ni'mah. Everything we have, all our possessions, this mal that we have, ni'mah from Allah. Allah says, وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ. Whatever singular blessing you have of the whole genus of blessings, فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. It's directly from God. It's not even through like some intermediary, like the pen is made by whatever, Bic, and the big company is owned by so-and-so, and so the factory made it, and this and that, and then I went to Office Depot, and then I went and purchased it with this money, and then finally I have the pen, like all the stages of its arrival before it reaches me. Allah negates all that. He says, فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. It's just from God. وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. Every single advantage and blessing and thing that you have, it's directly from Allah. It's directly from the divine presence. فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. So value that, and so when you name it, it's like because every name every ism is with the musamma, every name is with the named, and the named then has a metaphysical ma'na, because the ism is used for that which has a ma'na. The name is used for that which has a meaning. You don't name something that has no meaning. And so there is a ma'na that you're valuing. You're actually honoring the meaning that's infused with that, which is it's being from Allah. The ma'na that infuses every object that we possess is the fact that it came from Allah. And so one of the awliya, he said, when I realized the sanctity of things, I wouldn't even slam a cup down on the table hard. Like you treat things gently because it has that sacredness. And so we should name our possessions, and it's a sunnah. I mean, brother, where is it in the Quran and Sunnah? Here we go. Saqb is the name of the horse, and we'll see the names of his helmet's name was Sabugh. One of his swords' name was Rasub. I mean, we're going to do these names right now. So this is a sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Saqb, this is the first horse. Awulaha Saqbu. Al-Muhajjal al-Aghar, and he had white ankles and a white forehead. The Ghurr al-Muhajjalin, like our wudu, when we make wudu, the people of wudu on Yawm al-Qiyamah will be Ghurr Muhajjalin. We'll have the streaks, the illumination of wudu on our faces and our limbs, based on these types of pedigreed horses that they have the white ankles and the white forehead. So Saqb was like that. الطلق ذو السبق الذي له اشتهر, swift, triumphant in race, famous due to his owner. أول ما غزا عليه المجتبى بأحد فلم يزل مهذبا. He was the first horse that the chosen one fought upon at Uhud, and he was always well groomed. فلم يزل مهذبا. So again, taking care of what Allah has given us. That's a sunnah. So not like mistreating even things, let alone animals. And the Prophet hated when people mistreated animals, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He once went to someone's place and this camel was crying. Tears were coming, and the Prophet went up to it and sallallahu alaihi wasallam started massaging behind its ears and asking what's wrong. And the camel spoke to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said that its owner was abusing it. And our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam rebuked the owner very sternly. He said, how dare you, harm this creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, O kama qal. So taking care of animals and even our possessions. فَلَمْ يَزَلْ مُهَذَّبًا. So that's the first. And then he says the second, wal-ward. And look at the name he gives. The second one he calls rose. Ward, the rose. Wal-murtajiz. The third, murtajiz is the poet. Because the way it used to neigh had like a rhyme to it. So he named it murtajiz, the third horse. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. الَّذِي شَهِدْ لَهُ بِهِ خُزَيْمَةُ حِينَ جُحِدْ. And this is the one our Prophet ﷺ purchased murtajiz and the seller denied. There was a dispute. So Khuzaymah, the companion, he said, I witnessed that the Prophet bought it. ﷺ. I witnessed. And so when this is the murtajiz, this horse, then it was the dispute ended. Khuzaymah didn't see the purchase though. When he was asked, he said, the reason I witnessed, because I know you can't lie. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, your witnessing counts for 2 witnesses. Your witnessing counts for 2 witnesses. And so Khuzaymah's his witnessing is sufficient for 2 witnesses. And when the Quran was being compiled and they wanted 2 witnesses for each ayah, the last ayahs of Surah Tawbah, they couldn't find a second witness. Witness not for its revelation, but it's being written. And so Khuzaymah single-handedly witnessed it. And this was valid because the Prophet said his witnessing counts for 2 witnesses. So the Sahaba accepted it. That's Khuzaymah. So the fourth one, وَالطِّرْفُ, the pedigreed. The fifth one, وَاللَّحِيف, the blanket, because it had this long tail that covered the ground. So the Prophet named him Lahif, the blanket. وَالْمُلَاوِح, the sixth one. Mulawih is the lanky, because this was like a tall and skinny horse, so he called him Mulawih sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wad-darsu, the bite. Wal-lizzaz, which is the tenacious. Dhaka sabih, that galloper. So he mentions 8 of the names: As-Sakb, Al-Ward, Al-Murtajiz, Al-Tirf, Al-Lahif, Al-Mulawih, Al-Dars, Al-Lizzaz. 8. These are 8 of the 9 or 10 horses of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ثم البغال كلها مروية فضة والدلدل والأيلية. Then his mules, all of whom have been chronicled. And so he mentions 3 of the mules, their names: Fidda, which is silver, because it had like a white color. Duldul is porcupine. Duldul means porcupine. He named one of his mules. This was one actually gifted by Muqawqis. Muqawqis, the Coptic ruler, when he sent a gift, a big gift, amongst it was Duldul, the porcupine. And then the third one, Ayliya. And Lizzaz, the 8th horse we mentioned, was also gifted by Muqawqis. That was part of the gift. Lizzaz, the horse, and Duldul, the... ثم حمار اسمه يعفور. And then his donkey, whose name was Ya'fur. Ya'fur means a tawny gazelle. A tawny gazelle. Ya'fur, after the Prophet died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya'fur threw itself into a well and committed suicide. Ya'fur, the one donkey of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after the Prophet passed away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he threw himself into a well and committed suicide. So that's the love of Ya'fur for its owner. It would not stand to be owned by anyone after him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَالنَّاقَةُ, and then of his she-camels, Al-Qaswa faqat ma'thur. The only one mentioned by name in the narrations is Al-Qaswa. Al-Qaswa, of course, the famous she-camel that the Prophet was riding in his hijrah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he purchased from Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And he wouldn't allow it, he wouldn't just take it as a gift. He wanted the ajr of every part of his hijrah, so he purchased Qaswa from Sayyidina Abu Bakr. This was the one that he was riding. And then when he entered Medina and everyone was trying to grab Qaswa to to stop at his home so that he could host the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Da'ha فَإِنَّهَا مَأْمُورَةٌ," leave her alone because she is being commanded, i.e. Allah was commanding Qaswa, and Qaswa then stopped at the courtyard of Sahel and Suhail, the two orphans, which is where the masjid was built. And this was right next to the house of our master Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, who was clever enough to go grab the luggage while people were busy with the Prophet ﷺ, bring it into his house, so that when other people then started saying, "Stay with us," the Prophet said, "A man is with his luggage," and so he stayed with our master Sayyidina Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, who is buried in Istanbul, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And Qaswa was also, it was the one that when wahi would come down on the Prophet ﷺ, he would be on Qaswa. And Qaswa as well, it's related in the Shifa of Qadi Iyad that she used to speak to the Prophet ﷺ. أنها تكلمه عليه السلام. She used to speak to the Prophet ﷺ. وأن العشب كان يبادر إليها في الرعي. And the pasture that she would eat would actually rush to her. The pasture, the greenery would move to Qaswa so that she could eat, seeking the blessing of our Prophet ﷺ. وأن السباع تجتنبها وتناديها إنك لمحمد. And wild animals like lions and cheetahs and these things, they would avoid her. They would avoid her and would call out to Qaswa, "Verily you belong to Muhammad." Qadi Iyad relates this in the Shifa. وأن الإسفرايني ذكر أنها لم تأكل ولم تشرب بعد موته عليه السلام حتى ماتت. Abu Ishaq al-Asfarayini, who is one of the greatest theologians of our tradition, he's an Ashari master, he mentions that Qaswa, after the Prophet died, Qaswa stopped eating and drinking until she too died. Qaswa stopped eating and drinking after the passing of our Prophet until she also died. And this is out of the love. So Ya'fur, passionately in love with the Prophet ﷺ, couldn't stand being alive after him. Qaswa, passionately in love with the Prophet ﷺ, couldn't stand being alive after. So we can actually learn from his animals, right? Not that we should take our lives, but that we should give our hearts, right? Metaphysically take our lives, i.e. give our hearts to the beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the Imam says, rahimahullah, yes, he mentions, good. وَهِيَ الَّتِي امْتَطَى بِالْامْتِرَاءِ نَبِيُّنَا فِي الْهِجْرَةِ الْغَرَّاءِ. We mentioned this. It is known for certain that she was the one our Prophet rode on his famous hijrah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَكَانَ لَا يَحْمِلُهُ إِن نَزَلَ عَلَيْهِ وَحْيٌ غَيْرُهَا وَنُقِلَ. And none could bear the weight of him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was receiving revelation other than her. This is what we mentioned, that no animal could bear the weight of wahi with the Prophet on the animal except Qaswa, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَنُقِلَ أَنَّ اسْمَهَا الْجَدْعَاءُ وَالْعَضْبَاءُ فَقَدْ تَرَادَفَتْ لَهَا الْأَسْمَاءُ. It's also related that her name was Al-Jad'a as well as Al-Adba. So these are two names, and it's said that these are all referring to the same Al-Qaswa. They're not separate she-camels. So he says, فَقَدْ تَرَادَفَتْ لَهَا الْأَسْمَاءُ, so that all the names refer to the same animal. Now there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari about Adba. Adba never lost a race. In Sahih Bukhari, the hadith says that Adba never lost a race, and the Muslims would feel very happy and excited every time she raced because they would feel that this is the Prophet's camel and she never loses, and it was like a reinforcement of the triumph of Islam, etc. And so one day Adba lost a race, and the first time. And so the hadith says, فَاشْتَدَّ ذَلِكَ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ. This bore heavily on the Muslims. It's like a serious, crisis. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he used it as a teaching opportunity, and he says, ﷺ, حَقٌّ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَن لَا يَرْفَعَ شَيْئًا فِي الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا وَضَعَهُ. He says, ﷺ, it is a duty upon God, right, which is a metaphor. Allah does this so often, it's as if it's a duty upon Him. Haqqun ala Allah, it's a duty upon God that He not elevate anything in this world except that He lower it. He not raise anything in this world except that one day He lowers it. And so this is a sunnah of Allah's creation. It's such a repetitive, consistent sunnah, it's as if it's a duty upon God. Although He is the establisher of all duties, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, and this is like we say in English, what goes up must come down, right? This is actually a prophetic teaching, and He used the loss of Adba as a means to teach the companions this. And this is something to reflect on, that no matter how successful some of us may be, no matter how much we climb high, no matter how stacked the resume is, don't let it get to our heads and our hearts, because it's not going to last. And there's going to be that moment where we're humbled. There's going to be that moment. There must be that moment. Haqqun ala Allah. There must be that moment where we're humbled, and that's good for us. And so we can learn so much from Adba, subhanallah, qaswa. Between love of the Prophet ﷺ and staying humble, what more do you need of lessons? It sort of summarizes the whole religion if you think about it, right? Because love of the Prophet ﷺ entails following his sacred law, outwardly and inwardly, and staying humble entails that keeps you safe from the potential harm of being so good at following the sacred law, of being impressed with yourself. So if you have the two, you're set, inshallah. وَمِئَةٌ كَانَتْ لَهُ مِنَ الْغَنَمِ وَمَعَهَا 20 لَقْحَةٌ تُلَمْ. He had around 100 sheep, and add to that about 20 camels. وَكَانَ يَخْتَسُّ بِشُرْبِ شَاتِ تُدْعَى بِغَيْثَةٍ لَدَى الرُّوَاتِ. He used to drink specifically from the milk of one ewe, who according to the narrators was called Ghaytha. Ghaytha, the one ewe whose milk he would drink from. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Ghaytha has the root of help as well as rain. Ghawth, Ghayth, rain as well as help. Istighatha is to call out in emergency, to plead for help. So Ghaytha has that meaning. And milk, of course, there's a metaphysics of milk as well, because we know that Sayyidina Umar had a dream where milk was coming out of the hand of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was drinking from it, Umar radiallahu anhu. And we asked the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Al-ilmu al-ilm, it's knowledge. And so milk is that, that's the metaphor of milk. وَدِيكُهُ الْأَبْيَضُ جَاءَ فِي الْخَبَرِ وَلَمْ يَجِئْ فِيهِ اقْتِنَاؤُهُ الْبَقَرِ. He also had a white rooster, as has been related. And it's said that this white rooster would wake him up for the prayer. It would wake up for the prayer. And this is why he forbade cursing roosters. He said, لا تسب الديك فإنها توقظ للصلاة. Or كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, never curse roosters because they wake people up for the prayer. But he was not known to have owned any cows. He was not known to have owned any cows. And stemming from that, it was not known that he ever ate cow meat, which is interesting. It was not known that he ever ate cow meat. So he did eat meat, although very rarely, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was not his want, it was not his normative practice, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But on Eid, on special occasions, we know in the Khandaq, and there was specific instances where it's related that he ate meat, but it was always sheep, lamb, goat. We don't have a narration where he ate cow meat. And we know today the detrimental health effects of cow meat specifically. So, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're not saying it's haram though. It's permissible in the sacred law, but we're just alluding to. It's not the sunnah per se, but it's permissible. Silahuhu sallallahu alaihi wasallam, chapter concerning his weapons. Bayanu ma lahu min as-silahi sallallahu alayhi wahibul falahi. To elucidate all the weapons he possessed, may the granter of success bless him. Lahu min al-asyafi tis'atun faqat asma'uha marwiyatun an man farat. He owned only 9 swords. Their names were related by earlier scholars. Minha alladhi asabahu min badri wa kana yud'a dhal faqari fadri. So the first one is called Dhul Faqar. Dhul Faqar. He says, among them is the one he acquired from the booty of Badr. It was known by the epithet Dhul Faqar, so know that. Fadri. ومثله القلعي والبتار والحتف قد جاءت به الأخبار. Among them also were Al-Qal'i, Al-Battar, and Al-Hatf. Al-Qal'i, Al-Battar, and Al-Half, which he says all have come down in the Chronicles. كذلك المخدم والقضيب والعضب والرسوب يا لبيب. Also included are Al-Mikhdam, Al-Qadib, Al-Adb, Al-Rasub. And the Imam says, Ya Labib, oh sagacious one. He like encouraging the student. You're brilliant. Memorize all this. Labib from Lub, which is intelligence. So, how many names does he mention here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 names. Dhul Faqar, Al-Qal'i, Al-Battar, Al-Hatf, Al-Qadib, Al-Adb, Al-Rasub, and Al-Mikhdam. All of these have root meanings that have to do with cutting. Basically, all of these have root meanings that are related to qata'a, cutting, which is obviously fitting for swords. وَكَانَ عِنْدَهُ مِنَ الرِّمَاحِ أَرْبَعَةٌ تُعَدُّ لِلْكِفَاحِ. He also owned some spears, 4 of them to be exact. So he had 4 spears, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the Imam says, lil kifahi, for self-defense only. And this is something obviously to highlight in this section, is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his armor, his weapons were only for self-defense. And this is at the essence of even jihad in Islam. Jihad in Islam at its essence is for preservation of life and protection and defense. And even Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he says in his Majmu' al-Fatawa that he says all of the expeditions of the Prophet ﷺ are, if one analyzes them, one can see that they are defensive, essentially defensive. And he says this is at the essence of jihad itself, because he says the default relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims is musalama. This is Ibn Taymiyyah. He says the default relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims is musalama, which is mutual peace, from the root salam, but mufa'ala has to do with give and take, mutuality. And so musalama, mutual peace and tolerance and recognition. This is Ibn Taymiyyah saying, this is his theory of jihad in his Majmu' al-Fatawa. And so this is really, how we understand combat in Islam. وَمِثْلُهَا قِسِيُّهُ فِي الْعَدِّ وَالتُّرْسُ وَالْجَعْبَةُ مِمَّا أُبْدِي. Of like number were his bows, so 4 spears, 4 bows. And I should also mention his shield and quiver. So he had a turs and ja'ba, a shield and a quiver for the arrows. وَأَدْرُعٌ كَانَتْ لَهُ بَهِيَّةٌ. He also had beautiful armor. So the dar' is the armor, adru' the plural. أَسْمَاؤُهَا فِضَّةُ وَالسَّعْدِيَّةُ ثَالِثُهَا ذَا الْفُضُولِ تُدْعَى كَانَتْ لَهُ يَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ دِرْعًا. So he mentions the names of 3 of his armors. The first is Fidda, which is also the name of one of his mules, which means silver, because it was also like a white shining armor. The second is Sa'diyah, and the third is Dhat al-Fudul. Dhat al-Fudul. So, and the Imam says Dhat al-Fudul was the one he used on Hunayn. On Hunayn, the Prophet ﷺ used Dhat al-Fudul. The commentator says that the only 2 times where the Prophet ﷺ doubled up his armor were Uhud and Hunayn. Uhud and Hunayn. And so at Hunayn, he doubled up with Sa'diyah and Dhat al-Fudul. Those are the 2, Sa'diyah and Dhat al-Fudul. At Uhud, he doubled up with Fidda and Dhat al-Fudul. Fidda and Dhat al-Fudul, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَمِغْفَرٌ يُدْعَ السَّبُوغ. And a helmet that was called as-Sabugh, كَانَ لَهُ وَنَحْوُهُ مِنْطَقَةٌ مُجَمَّلَةٌ. And also a beautiful belt that was mujammal, it was ornamented and radiant, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sabugh, sabgh means long. So sabugh means lengthy. وَرَايَةٌ سَوْدَاءُ بِالْعُقَابِ تُدْعَى هَدَاكَ اللَّهُ لِلصَّوَابِ. He also had a black banner known as uqab. And uqab has the root of consequence. Iqab. Uqab. May Allah guide you to what is upright. وَكَانَ أَيْضًا عِنْدَهُ لِوَاءُ أَبْيَضُ قَدْ فَشَتْ بِذَا الْأَنْبَاءُ. And he also possessed a flag that was smaller and it was white in color. At least this is what is widespread in the reports. And on the small flag, it had written on it the Shahada, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thiyabuhu sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his garments. Bayanu ma lahu min al-thiyabi wa min uthathin fastami' khitabi. To clarify now what he possessed of clothing and also his furniture, please listen attentively to what I have to say. Fastami' khitabi. This is the Imam like waking the students up. Students tend to nod off a bit, so fastami', listen. كان له من الثياب 12 على الذي نقله أهل السير. He had 12 articles of clothing, at least this is what his biographers have reported. So that's it. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So we should go home, look in our closets. One of the things our teachers teach us, specifically they mentioned this when we were abroad, they said that, they've said it more than once, is that look in your closet and find everything you haven't worn in the last year and get rid of it. Because if you didn't need it for a whole year, you won't need it anymore. And give it to someone that will need it right now. Because there's plenty of people that will need it right now. And so there's some simple things we can do to, inshallah, try to approximate the sunnah of our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we should be careful if we're hesitant to let go. If you find something you're hesitant, then that's even more reason to let go of it, and because you're treating your heart then. You're actually, it's not just a good deed of giving something away, but you're actually treating your condition. And treating the heart, at the heart of the matter is treating the heart. And so we should be cognizant of what we're attached to. We should be cognizant of what's happening inside. This is really this is a foundational precept of our religion. All the other things sort of stem from it, but foundationally is real examination of what's happening. Because there's certain acts of obedience we might find facilitated and easy, but there's others that they're heavier, and those that are heavier, then it's a sign from Allah showing us what we need to work on. And the famous statement of Yahya ibn Mu'adh al-Razi, the 3rd century master, that unfortunately it's attributed to the Prophet very often, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as a hadith, but it's not a hadith, it's a statement of Yahya ibn Mu'adh al-Razi, where he said, Man arafa nafsahu arafa rabba. Whoever knows himself will know his Lord. And what that means is that there's different tafsirs, but one of the meanings is that whoever knows his faults, whoever gets to know himself and realizes what his faults are, genuinely knows what his problems are, then he can at least start the process of working on himself. And if he works on himself and gets rid of those faults, then he will end up knowing his Lord. He will draw nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gain a deep knowledge of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if we don't know ourselves, then how can we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We'll be distant from Him because of our sins. And there's a beautiful statement of the teacher of Imam Junaid, Sari al-Saqati, that he says, Ma ra'aytu. It's a long statement, so I don't know if I remember it, but ما رأيت أحبط للعمل ولا أفسد للقلب ولا أسرع لهلاك العبد ولا أدوم للإضرار ولا أقرب لمقت الله للمقت ولا ألزم لطريق الرياء والعجب والرياسة من قلة معرفته لذنبه من قلة معرفته لذنبه. He says that ما رأيت, I have never seen anything, the teacher of Imam Junaid said, I never saw anything that is أحبط للعمل, that causes good deeds to evaporate, that destroys good deeds. Nor that أفسد للقلب, that corrupts the heart more. Nor that أسرع لهلاك العبد, that's quicker in causing a person to be perished. Nor that's أدوم للإضرار, nor that's more consistently in causing, more consistent in causing harm to others. إضرار, more consistent in a person causing harm to others. ولا أقرب للمقت, nor closer to being despised by Allah. والعياذ بالله. ولا ألزم لطريق الرياء والعجب والرياسة, nor more steadfast on the path that leads one to fall into showing off in their religion and being impressed with themselves, vanity, and loving leadership and prestige. Riyasa. All of that. I've never seen anything that does all of that more than قِلَّةِ مَعْرَفْتِهِ لِذُنُوب لِذَنْبِهِ, than a person not knowing their sins. Then how little a person diagnoses himself for his faults. That causes all those consequences the most. That vice, it's a foundational vice of not realizing what's wrong in oneself, is the most harmful in all those aspects. This is what the Imam of Al-Junayd taught Al-Junayd, and that's why Al-Junayd became Al-Junayd. So we should realize what we are and work on it. And so charity, right? Our Prophet ﷺ only had 12 articles of clothing, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. منها قميصان له شعار ثم كساءان له دثار. He had 2 shirts that he wore directly against his skin and 2 shawls that he would wear over them. وجبتان, he had 2 jubbas. وإزار وثياب, and a loincloth and other garments. أربعة, that numbered 4. ثم العمامة السحاب, he also had a turban known as السحاب. It means like clouds. His turban, he named it Sahab, clouds. أعني التي وهبها عليا, I mean, of course, the one he gave to Ali. So his turban named Sahab he gave to Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajh. فلا تكن بعلمها غبية, so be not an imbecile by forgetting such knowledge. This is if we want to gauge if we're smart or not, this is the Imam is saying we should know such details. ثم قلانس صغار لاطية وهي ثلاث فاغتنم بيانية. He also had some small tight-fitting skull caps, so that you wear underneath the turban, that were 3 in number, so seize this information. وَالْمِشْطُ مِنْ عَاجٍ لَهُ, he also had an ivory comb in his possession. وَالْمُكْحَلَ or mukhula, as well as a kuhul case, so a case for the kuhul that you wear in the eyes, which he would only wear at night, I believe, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The sunnah if one wears it is to do it at night. Wallahu alam. Mir'atuhu al-miqradu was-siwaku lah, a mirror, scissors, and a toothstick. So he had a mir'at, and the sunnah, the dua, when one looks in the mirror is Allahumma kama hassanta khalqi fa hassin khuluqi. Oh Allah, just as you beautified my outward, so too beautify my inward. Okay, that just as we have concern of if we're presentable on the outward, so too should we have concern with Allah if our inward is presentable to Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he would say this, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would see himself in the mirror. And then of course the toothstick, I mean, it's sufficient that he said about it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, matharatun lil fam, marda lil rabb. That's enough of a praise of the toothstick. Just 2 statements of the Prophet ﷺ. He said it cleans the mouth and it pleases the Lord. So, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And to fulfill that sunnah, one can use a toothbrush. This is mentioned by the fuqaha, because the sunnah is considered the act of cleaning the teeth, and so whatever tool. But of course, if one has an actual siwak, there's an extra barakah in that. ثم فراش أدم قد حشي بالليف ثم قدحان فعيا. He also had a leather mattress that was stuffed with palm fronds, and know also that he had 2 drinking bowls. So open the cupboards, see how many dishes we have. We should just do a lot of istighfar. Most likely we're not going to get rid of most of our dishes and have only 2. Most likely we're not going to reduce down to 12 articles of clothing. Although some people do. Like there's people that they literally have, it's nice clothing. You can get nice quality. The hadith says, "Inna Allah yuhibbu an yara athara ni'amahi ala abdihi." Or kama qal, verily Allah loves, in Tirmidhi and elsewhere, Allah loves to see the trace of His blessings upon His servant. So we can get nice quality things. If Allah has blessed us and we're able to get things of nice clothes or furniture or whatnot of nice quality, there's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't have to be that much. In quantity, we can do with very little. And we could be surprised how little we can do with if you actually see what you need. But if we're unable to reduce the quantity to this level, we should just do a lot of istighfar. Our tongue should be moist with the remembrance of Allah. Allah yatub alayna. As thumma la tus'aluna. One of the scariest ayahs for us in the modern world, particularly for us in the West, we're so blessed, alhamdulillah, compared to the rest of the world, by and large. There's obviously exceptions, but for many Muslims here in the West, is that ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ, with emphasis, lam at-tawkid, nun at-tawkid, undoubtedly, with absolute certainty, لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ, on that day, عَنِ النَّعِيمِ, on just the enjoyments. It's the mubah, it's not even the haram. We will be asked about the permissible pleasures of this life. The tafsir of that is al-aswadan, dates and water. Dates and water, that's the tafsir of the na'im in that ayah. So what about what we enjoy? Allah yatub alayna. We should really, so we need to, la yazalu lisanuka ratban bi dhikrillah, he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let your tongue be ever moist with the remembrance of Allah. Just to make that hisab easy, just to wipe off all the sins of having so much. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad. فَوَاحِدٌ بِفِضَّةٍ مُضَبَّبُ وَالتَّوْرُ مِنْ حِجَارَةٍ وَمِخْضَمُ. So he had 2 drinking bowls. One of them had some silver plating. So we're not allowed to have silver, we're not allowed to eat using silver utensils or silver dishes, but silver plating, a little bit of plating is permissible. Mudabbab. And then he also had a large vessel of bathing that was made of stone and a henna bowl, mikhdab for henna. وَمِن زُجَاجٍ قَدَحٌ وَمُغْتَسَلْ لَهُ مِنَ السُّفْرِ وَقَسْعَةٌ تُمَلْ. He also had a glass bowl, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He also had a bathing vessel made of the best copper and a giant guest plate as related. For guests, a larger plate for guests when guests would come, and they would eat from the same plate. وَالصَّاعُ وَالسَّرِيرُ ثُمَّ الْمُدُّ وَخَاتَمٌ مِّن فِضَّةٍ يُعَدُّ. A large measuring cup, that's called a sa'. And then the mud is a small measuring cup. So he had one of each. And he had a wooden framed bed. A sarir is a wooden framed bed. But of course it was on the floor. But he had that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then a silver ring that he had in his possession. And the Hanafis consider wearing the ring a sunnah only if it has some authority like a judge or a ruler, because the Prophet ﷺ, his ring was used for stamping the letters and whatnot, and so the Hanafis interpret it. So other than that, the Hanafis don't consider it a sunnah, although it's fine to wear, whereas the other madhabs consider it a general sunnah throughout, even if one is not a judge or whatnot. وَكَانَ قَدْ أَهْدَى لَهُ خُفَّيْنِ أَصْحَمَةٌ أَيْضًا بِدُونِ مَيْنِ. Ashama, who is the Negus, the Negus Najashi, he gifted 2 khufs to the Prophet ﷺ, leather socks, which is mutawatir. It's factual in our tradition that the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba wore khufs and wiped over them for wudu, which is why it's even mentioned in our books of Aqidah, because it's a point of creed we have to believe in because of its tawatur status. So Ashama gifted that to the Prophet ﷺ. وَكَانَ ثَوْبَانِ لَهُ لِلْجُمْعَةِ غَيْرَ ثِيَابِ لُبْسِهِ الْمُرْتَفِعَةِ. He also had 2 special garments for the Friday prayer that were not included among the precious clothes he regularly wore. So he had 2 garments just for Jum'ah that he would not wear normally, because Jum'ah and Eid, these are the days we should wear our best clothes, either new or washed nice clothes. وَكَانَ مِن دِينٌ لَهُ لِيَمْسَحَ بِهِ عَلَى الْوَجْهِ الْمُنِيرِ الْأَصْبَحَ. And there was also his handkerchief, mindil, that he used to wipe his beautiful and radiant countenance with. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Salla alayhi rabbuna wa sallama wa alihi wa sahbihi wa karrama. May the benedictions of our Lord and His peace be upon him, his family, and magnificent companions. Alhamdulillah wa shukrillah. So we're blessed to, these last few classes we need to go a little faster because we want to complete the text, inshallah. So mashallah, we made good progress. So any questions, concerns? So the concept that every ism has a musamma, that every name corresponds to that which is named. And the thing which is named is a meaning, a ma'na, because you're naming something that has meaning. And so if it's named, then there's some reality to it that it's indicating, it's alluding, it's signifying that reality. So we were just alluding to, highlighting the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, he was naming his objects. It's a type of like ta'zeem ni'matillah, basically what we're saying. It's a type of venerating the blessings of Allah. From the venerating, this is something Allah loves, that we venerate and honor and respect the blessings He gives us. And so from the veneration of the objects, the property that we have, is to actually affirm that they are significant. So the word significant in English is a good word for this conversation. Significant means that which signifies. The ism is that which signifies meaning. Right? Dalala al-ma'na, it's that which signifies meaning. So our objects are significant, like they signify meaning. And what's the ultimate meaning that they all signify is وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. Whatever we have of blessing, it's directly from Allah. This is the ultimate signification of every blessing that we have. And so naming that is a way of reminding ourselves of this ontological reality of these objects, is that Allah is giving us these objects, and not just that He gave it to us once and now we own it. In fact, He is, according to the Asharis and Maturidis, He is recreating the object at every moment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually remaking the object at every moment, because in our aqidah, things don't last on their own. Allah is the creator of every moment. كُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. At every moment, He is engaged in an affair. And what's His affair? هَذَا خَلْقُ اللَّهِ, His creation. And amongst His creation in this moment right now is that glass of water. And amongst His creation in this moment right now is this microphone. And amongst His creation in this moment right now is myself and all of you, and the book and the clothes and all of these things. So the things are not mere things, they are Allah's work, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they're from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, if we name our objects, inshallah, it's sort of reminding the heart of their value. The musamma has a value. Wallahu a'lam. Yes?
Is that also related to the ayat of the Quran where Allah asked Adam to tell the malaika the names?
Absolutely, mashallah. That's a very good point. That Allah Ta'ala asked the angels to inform of the names of all things, and they weren't able to, but He had given that knowledge to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And that's good. The ayah mentions the asma, but the ulama say that with every ism is a musamma, is a meaning, a ma'na. And so the asma, they all signify ma'ani, meanings. And so the language itself is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The names are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that language comes from the divine ultimately. And some mufassirin say that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was taught all the languages. Allah knows best, but language comes from the divine ultimately. No. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can you please repeat the Arabic and also the English? Allah lost the race.
Yeah, so the hadith in Bukhari about the Utbah losing the race, that حَقٌّ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَنْ لَا يَرْفَعَ شَيْئًا فِي الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا وَضَعَهُ. حَقٌّ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَنْ لَا يَرْفَعَ شَيْئًا فِي الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا وَضَعَهُ. أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Which is it is a duty or right upon God to never elevate a thing in this world without lowering it, except that He will lower it. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, any other questions? Yes. Right. Right. MashaAllah, it's a good question. So reconciling the prophetic virtue of humility, tawadu', with self-confidence and promoting oneself, which is something that we have to do in situations of applying for a job or in different corporate structures, for example. So, fulfilling the sunnah in a proper way is very nuanced. And so it's important to be aware of these nuances, that tawadu' is a state of the heart and it's manifested in behavior. But the definition of tawadu' is to see yourself as less than others. To see yourself as less than others. And so we should always have a respect for each other, that we see our fellow, obviously believers, as superior to us, but this would extend even to non-believers in the sense that we don't know the khitam. We don't know the finality of anyone's life. And so a person might be very tyrannical, they might be a disbeliever or whatnot at the moment, but before they leave this world, they might be like Umar ibn Al-Khattab. They might be like, who himself was at one moment a disbeliever, and then he ends up being like Umar ibn Al-Khattab. So what Allah did before, He can do again. So we don't know the finality of even the non-Muslims who are around, so we can't see ourselves as inherently better. Obviously, we believe that Iman is better than kufr. We're not denying that. Iman itself is better than kufr, obviously. But I've been gifted with Iman, alhamdulillah, and Allah could take that away. La qadar Allah, that could be taken away. May Allah protect us from that. And a person who's not a Muslim, at that moment, they don't have Iman, but they could get it, and inshallah, may Allah give it to them. So we don't know the end states. So we should see ourselves as less than everyone. This is the reality of humility. Now, in terms of promoting oneself, that one can recognize the blessings Allah has given one and use that for the sake of Allah. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you're inherently better than someone else, but one can try to, for certain situations, promote oneself, seeing it as coming from Allah. Like in the heart, Allah has honored me with A, B, and C, and because of that, I feel I can do a good job at this particular task. So the example from the Quran itself is Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam said, "Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ard." Place me in charge of the treasury. So he's promoting himself, and he says, I am trustworthy, and I'm an expert. He says, I can safeguard, and I am an expert. I have knowledge. So he mentions some of the gifts and talents he has, which he recognizes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and because of those gifts, he's seeking a position to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, because he feels he can do that job well. And so he's asking, so as long as one doesn't let it get to their ego, that it's something about me that I'm so special. No, seeing it as وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. Whatever you have a blessing, it's directly from Allah. But because of that blessing, I can serve, inshallah. Allah has empowered me to serve, and so you apply, or you try to position yourself for the sake of Allah. As long as it's for the sake of Allah, it's inshallah, it's a good thing, But one has to be very careful. That's the bottom line. And it can be so subtle that we don't. So again, it goes back to knowing ourselves, like really constantly examining ourselves. And if we notice that it is something that, is getting to our head or whatnot, then we should retreat and treat. We should retreat and treat the heart before trying again, and Allah knows best. So, alhamdulillah. Yeah, self-confidence. So, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. If our self-confidence is rooted in trusting Allah, inshallah, it's a good thing. So I'm not confident in myself, in and of myself, but I have a good opinion of Allah that He will give me tawfiq. So through Allah, I'm self-confident. I'm confident in Allah granting me tawfiq, and I rely on Him. Inshallah, this way it's a positive thing, and one can be self-confident through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we should never take Allah out of the picture. The bottom line, whenever in doubt, put Allah at the center of the situation. So my own self-confidence, my confidence is in Allah, because my own self is being maintained by Allah at every moment, and my talents and virtues are being gifted to me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He can take them away. And many talented people find themselves completely stuck in that very thing they're talented in. They find that one day, the grand artist one day, he just can't get it right. Or the master speaker, the spokesperson, just gets up on the mic, and suddenly nothing coherent is coming out. And the one with the best memory, they just can't, the mind just isn't working, they can't get it to click. So, and even with mundane things, the best sports, all these sports stars or whatnot, they have their off games and nothing goes right. So Allah Ta'ala, just as He gives, He takes away. So if our confidence is through Allah, then inshallah it's a type of tawakkul. And inshallah we'll have tawfiq in our self-confidence. Yeah. Sorry? These are most of them. The commentator added a few here and there that we didn't get a chance to mention. But by and large, these are most of the possessions. Right, those would be their possessions. So his wives, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the ummahat, they had their own possessions that would be in those hujarat, in those apartments or quarters. These are particularly his, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he had different companions that were in charge, like Ibn Masood would hold the siwak and the sandals, and different companions would be there to serve. His servants, his khuddam that we covered earlier, they would, and some of these would be in the homes and whatnot. So Allah knows best. Any other questions?
We have some questions online.
Inshallah.
There's a few. There's about 3 questions. One of the questions was, what is a juba? How did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to dress?
What was the question? Sorry.
The question was, what is a juba? How did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to dress?
Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In general, a jubba is a type of outer wear, an outer garment. Let me see if the commentator gives more description. Okay. قال العراقي ثلاث. So the poet, the text said he had 2 jubbas, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hafidh al-Iraqi said there was actually 3, and then he defines it. He says, والجبة ثوبان بينهما قطن إلا أن تكون من صوف فقد تكون غير محشوبة كما في جاسوس. So the definition of a jubba is 2 garments that are like sewn together. Between the 2 is cotton. So like it's like an outer garment made of an outer and inner lining with cotton in between. Unless it's made of wool, then it's not stuffed, and it's just the 2 wool, outer and inner wool linings that are just sewed together. So it's a type of outer wear that is of this description, and Allah knows best. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What was the other question? Sorry.
The other questions, how do we learn, before that, earlier you talked about the Prophet's servants. Did he have any slaves? What was the status of slavery at the time of the Prophet? You mentioned that a Rahman bin Auf was similar to his slaves.
I mentioned what? What was this last part?
Rahman bin Auf was similar to his slaves.
Oh, right. Abdurrahman ibn Auf. Yes, so we did the khuddam. and the mawali. So he had both owned slaves, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as khuddam, servants, free servants. But he freed all of his slaves, so they became mawali. He freed all of his slaves, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so they became what are called clients, which they retain a connection to the clan. They retain an affiliation to the clan, and it's as if they're part of the clan, but they're not related by blood. So he did own slaves, but he freed them, and then he had khuddam, which are free slaves or free servants that were not owned but served. What was the other question? Status of slavery at that time. So slavery was a global reality, and the way many modern day scholars understand it was that Islam did everything it could to reduce the avenues of getting slaves, which is just limiting it to conquest, and then opening the doors of freeing slaves, which is the many ahadith about the virtues of freeing slaves and how much reward that entailed, and then to completely uproot it while it was such an ingrained aspect of that pre-modern world would have been very, very difficult, if not impossible. And so this is how many thinkers understand it. And then also to keep in mind that owned slaves in Islam had an incredible number of rights. So they were given food, clothing, housing, education. They were not abusing a slave was completely not allowed. So again, in Ibn Hajar's list of kaba'ir, major sins, ta'dhib al-abd or ta'dhib al-qin, to punish or torment a slave, to abuse them. Ta'dhib is abuse. That's haram. It's an enormity in Islam. And and so there could be no physical abuse, no violence done to them, and they were taken care of. And in exchange, they would do chores and whatnot. So it's my contention that if we were to ask most inmates in prison that are incarcerated for long periods of time, would they want to trade their situation to that situation, that they would opt for what Islam offers as an owned slave, because now we have a different type of slavery, and there's different types of slavery today, and they're hidden, they're not apparent, but they're much worse, they're much more cruel. And what Islam facilitated a very merciful system of slavery. So there's danger with the terms are problematic, because slavery in our time in the West, it conjures up what we recall what happened in the United States in the 1800s, and that reality was far different and divorced from the reality of slavery, quote unquote, in Islam. So, and a slave could go to the judge, they could go to the qadi, they could take their owner to court, and they could accuse them. They could say, he's doing this and that to me, and if they have proof, and it wasn't difficult to get two witnesses then, because things were done in the public and open, there's family, there's other slaves and whatnot, then they could get so many rights and whatnot. So and there's so many stories of how the companions would free slaves, and like Ibn Umar, he freed thousands and thousands of slaves, and that he said, any of my slaves that learns how to pray properly, I will free them. Ibn Umar said that. And so then they all learned how to pray, and some of them were just doing it to get freed. They weren't genuinely interested in praying properly or whatnot. And so one of them said to Ibn Umar that you're getting duped. They're just doing it to get out, to get this bargain you're offering. And he says, "Man khada'ana fillah in khada'na lahu." Whoever dupes us for the sake of Allah, we'll get duped for them. We'll happily get duped. So that's the status of slavery in Islam, to my knowledge. Wallahu a'lam. Any other questions?
So we have just a couple more questions have popped up. I know time is, class is almost over, but I just want to honor the questions online.
Inshallah.
So maybe I'll just say the last two, and then you can answer
Okay,
them.
inshallah.
So one person asked they would really like to know the names of the commentaries if possible.
Yes.
And the last question was, how do we learn to truly love for the sake of Allah? Sometimes I feel that we have lost the beauty and truthfulness of true love in our time. Jazakallah khair.
Wa iyaakum. So the first question is a lot easier to answer. The text is called Qurrat al-Absar by Imam Lamti, and the sharh I'm using is Bughyatul Abrar by Sheikh Muhammad al-Hasan al-Khaddim al-Yaqubi al-Shinqiti, who I believe is still alive, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, Mauritanian Sheikh. How do we rekindle love? So inshallah, make dua to Allah. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take us to Him by love and not beautiful du'as. We ask Allah to take us to Him bi mulatafat al-ihsan, by the sweetness of His gentle kindness and ihsan, His doing well, treating us nicely. Shukr wal mahabba, and by thankful gratitude to Him, and by love, in love of Him, wal iman wal iqan wal ma'rifah, and through faith and certainty and knowing Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, la bi salasit al imtihan, not by the chains of tribulations, and sabr, and bearing through that. So إذا أطلق لسانك بالطلب فاعلم أنه يريد أن يعطيك. If Allah unties the knot of your tongue such that you start asking for something consistently, realize He wants to give it to you. Realize He wants to give it to you. So if we find that our hearts are having trouble with love, then we should ask Allah to grant us love. But ask with lutf. Always add with lutf, because when Allah loves a servant, He tries him. When Allah loves a servant, He tries him. And in Allah idha habba qawman ibtalahum, the Prophet says, when Allah loves people, He tries them. So we don't want to be tried with that love. We want it gently, Ya Allah, bil lutf. So this is to make dua, and always to add with gentleness, and then to work on gratitude. That gratitude is the road to love. And so have shukr consistently, have shukr, and not be frustrated at the vicissitudes of our lives, and that inshallah one day that shukr will transmute and transform into genuine love. And it's usually in degrees. It's not like a night and day shift, but the degrees will enhance where the shukr turns into mahabba, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad an-nabiyul ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, walhamdulillahi rabbil